Hey, welcome to the Learning to Lead podcast. I'm Paul Doherty, your host, and I'm joined with the John C. Maxwell, the amazing leadership guru, and someone who I've looked up to since I was very little. My dad gave me a couple of your books when I was really young, and then as I got older, one of the books that was probably my favorite, I was 18, he gave me this book, Success One Day at a Time.
One Day at a Time.
And then he gave me another one called The Right to Lead, and it looks just like this. But I would love for you to maybe share with those who are listening, those who are watching, how you got into what you do, how you got into writing and focusing on leadership. And people know about your books, but some of them don't know your behind-the-scenes story of how you started writing some of these books.
I'll be glad to. First of all, it's so good, Paul, to be with you and Ashley here and just, spend time with friends.
Come on.
I never had a desire to write a book. What's very interesting, when I was in high school, college, somebody said, well, you want to write a book? I said, no, I like to read them. I don't have a desire to write them. So I'm about 27, and I'm sitting down with Les Parrott, one of my mentors, and I asked him, he'd written 5 books. I said, Les, why do you write books? And he said something that day, it changed my life. He said, I write books to influence people that I will never personally meet. As soon as he said that, I said, then I'm going to write books. Immediately I said, I want to be a writer, but I didn't want to be a writer for the reason most people want to be a writer. I wanted to be a writer because I wanted to influence people beyond my own personal touch. And so I was 27, and by the time I was, a couple years later, I wrote my first book called Think on These Things, which is really not a good book, but it was my first book. I tell people you're never good the first time, and I wasn't good the second time when I wrote a second book either, or the third one. It took me about 8 books before I think I figured out how to really write a book. But in fact, my first book, you'll love this. It's still in print, by the way, and it took me a year to write it. And it's only 100 pages, so get the picture. I could only do about 1 page every 3 days, So I broke that down one time. It basically averaged about a paragraph a day for a whole year, and it just exhausted me. And I had in that 100 pages, I had 33 chapters. So I had 3-page chapters.
Wow.
And so some lady recently,
which is one thing I like though about a lot of. Like this book, you feel like you're accomplishing.
Sure, yeah. Well, so some lady, literally, Paul came up to me recently with the book, and she said, "Would you sign the book?" I said, "Well, yeah." I said, "Oh my gosh!" I said, "That's my first book I ever wrote." She said, "I know it." She said, "I love that book." And of course, when she said she loved that book, it took me totally. I thought, "Oh my gosh, how could anybody love this book?" So I looked at her and I said, "What do you mean you love it?" She said, "Oh, I love the book." I said, "What do you love about it?" She said, "The short chapters." She said, "I love the short chapters." And then she said, "How did you think about?" What made you think about writing short chapters? I said, lady, it was my first book. I ran out of gas. When I wrote about 3 pages, I didn't have anything else to say. And so, it was hilarious to me. I didn't do the short chapters because I thought it was brilliant. I did short chapters because I was stupid. I didn't have anything else to say. And so I started. And when I wrote my first book, it was so exhausting. I thought, okay, now I'm done. And then I thought of something else. Thought, well, I need to share this with people. And you've heard the saying that the more you know you don't know. Mm-hmm. And so what happened was, when I wrote my first leadership book, I thought I'll write one leadership book. And then I wrote it, but I keep growing and learning leadership. I said, well, I need to share this with them. And now I think, 85 books later, something like that.
What was your first bestseller, New York Times bestseller?
Well, my first big bestseller was the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. That
today has sold how many?
Oh my gosh, millions of copies. It's, I think it's sold maybe 8 million in China alone.
In China alone?
Yeah, it's the best-selling leadership book ever written. And in fact, there are of the 5 top leadership books I think ever written. I think I've written 4 of them or something like that. So
that's incredible.
Yeah, but going back to my mentor and influencing people beyond my own personal touch, little did I realize that that's exactly what would happen. And so really my books and my writing now, it's kind of like the John the Baptist of everything I do. It goes before me. So no matter where I go, people say, well, I've read your books. And it kind of paves the way for all the things that we are trying to do to help people today. So but it was a decision. The other thing that was interesting, my mentor, Les Parrott, said to me, he said, John, never write a book to make money, because he said, you won't sell that many books. And so I thought, okay, I'm still just trying to influence people. That's okay, too. And I had another mentor named Elmer Towns. And Elmer had written quite a few books, and I was in his office one day, and it had all the books that he had written in a kind of in a plaque type of a deal, and how many copies that they had sold. And so I went down, tallied it all at the bottom, and he had sold 100,000 copies of his books. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, okay, that'll be my goal. I'd like to, in my lifetime, sell 100,000 copies of my books. And I told him that. I said, that's my goal. And he said, well, that's a pretty big goal. I said, well, I know I probably never get there, but that's my goal. Now, little did I know that, today I probably, in a month, I don't know, my total books would probably sell maybe 120,000 books a month. Wow. I sell more books in a month than I thought I would ever sell in a lifetime.
That's amazing.
And it's a story. It really is a story about if you really try to help people. What I want people to hear in this podcast is very simple. If you really just try to help people and you do your best to help them, I mean, you do try to serve them with excellence. Honestly, you'll go beyond any farther than you ever gone, and you'll grow beyond anything you've ever thought you'll grow. And that's the story of my life. Today, I would never believe that I would be where I am today, Paul. I never. So people, when they start talking about goal setting, I said I couldn't do a goal setting seminar with integrity, because the things that I have experienced and enjoyed and have been able to help people with are much more beyond anything I could ever thought. Really, I mean, way beyond.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm surprised. Every day I'm surprised. I think, oh my gosh, I had no idea. That's
so you
good.
didn't see that inside yourself, even as you were starting to experience a little bit of success in the beginning.
No, I really didn't. I'll have to say that I tried. I explain it this way. I think obedience is only understood on the back end. I don't think obedience is understood on the front end at all.
You just know you're supposed to do it.
Yeah. And so you just do what you're supposed to do. And I mean, there are a lot of biblical examples of, I mean, when Jesus turned the water into wine in John chapter 2, think about it. And Mary said to the servants, you do whatever he says. Whatever he says to you, do it, which I think is the key to obedience. Whatever he says to you, you just do it. And so they filled the water pots with water. And of course, can you imagine how they felt when they were taking it down the hallway to the master who was going to taste the wine, and they knew that they had put water in there? I mean, I can tell you, they're going to the master saying, I'm about to be fired. I mean, this is my last day at work, because when he tastes this water, we're all out of here. And of course, then he tasted, and the master, it said, of the household couldn't understand, because usually the best wine was the earliest, and he couldn't understand it. But it says, but the servants knew. And what I tell people all the time is, if you want to be the first to know, be the first to obey.
That's good.
And so when I look at my life today, all I can say is that everything that I thought on the front end, God has allowed it to become so much more on the back end than I could have ever imagined. And I really have no desire to take any credit. I have a lot of desire to point people to the fact that if they'll obey God, he'll do things in their life that they would have never thought would be possible. And he has for me, and he has for you, Paul and Ashley, and he will for others too. He just will. And so I tell people, you don't have to be brilliant, but you do have to be obedient. So let's get off of brilliance and let's stay with obedience.
So when you wrote the Maxwell Leadership Bible, which I've got one today, my dad, when he passed away, that was the first. Right before he passed, he said, Paul, you can have my Bible.
Wow.
Now, he thought he was going to be healed. He thought, I'll get out of the hospital, I'll live. But in 2009, he was in the hospital, and he asked me to preach my first sermon to the adult service, because I had been preaching our college-age
Sure.
Tuesday night service, but he said, Paul, I want you to preach this weekend, because he was out of the pulpit for 8 weeks. And so I was like, are you sure you want me? I'm 22 years old, fresh out of college. And he said, no, I want you up there. And he said, you can use my Bible. Well, it was the Maxwell Leadership Bible. So I'm going through your Bible. I'm reading all your devotions and reading through all of the, character highlights and just leadership lessons. But I ended up preaching a sermon called Who's Your Daddy? And used the Maxwell Leadership Bible. My dad gave me some notes after the service. He's like, you got to change this, you got to change that.
Yeah, just kind of mentoring you.
But this Bible has been a huge impact for pastors, Christians, even non-Christians love reading what you write in this. Who inspired you to write the Maxwell Leadership Bible?
Well, I was a pastor, as you know, for 25 years and loved the Bible and loved leadership. And so I did a lot of leadership teaching. And after I resigned the church and went into the secular world, which was my mission field in the business world, I missed teaching the Word because I didn't get that opportunity like I did as a pastor. And so I kind of needed my fix. And so I thought one day, I think I'm going to go back and start pulling out my messages on leadership out of the Bible, and talk to the publisher, which happened to be Thomas Nelson, which was big in Bibles anyway, and they loved the idea. And so that's exactly what I did. In fact, Tim Elmore, who who is on my staff, I said, Tim, help me, because he was a really good Bible teacher himself. And so anyway, we did our first edition, and then a second edition. Now it's in its third edition. But now I think that said there are over 600 lessons on leadership.
Wow. In
the Leadership Bible, and it's of all the things I've ever accomplished, I think it's the most important thing I've accomplished, because it's leadership that I love, and it's the Bible, which is enduring. So it's been a great thing. Of course, I'm with the secular community, and literally in one of our company conferences, this is pure secular, I have no idea, but the Leadership Bible was there. And it was totally a mix-up, because I would never brought a Leadership Bible to a secular conference. And so a guy came up to me afterwards and said, "You've got the Bible back there." I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Has your name on it?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay, yeah." And then they looked at me just sincerely as can be. He said, "Did you write the Bible?" Yeah. Now, see, that's the world I live in. That's the world I live in. He said, "Did you write the Bible?" And I said, No. I said, I had not. No. I said, "These are just my leadership thoughts." Now, here's what's incredible. He said to me, "Okay." I said, "But the lessons in it are out of the Bible, but I wrote those lessons." And he said, "Well, I love leadership." He said, I don't have a Bible. I've never had a Bible. He said, "I've never read the Bible. But if there are leadership lessons in here, I'm going to read it."
That's
and
awesome.
When he walked away, I mentally marked him. And I just felt God speak to my heart and say to me, "You're going to hear back from him someday." Go out 15 years from that time. I'm in Las Vegas speaking to 15,000 people at a huge convention. And I'm back at the table for probably 3 hours doing nothing but a long line, signing books, etc. A guy walks up, stands right in front of me, and he has my Maxwell Leadership Bible. And he looks at me and said, "Do you remember me?" And I looked at him and I said, "I remember you." And I told him about the conference. "You're the guy who said you didn't have a Bible, never read the Bible, because there's leadership stuff in there, you're going to read it." He said, "Yes." He said, that was me. That was me. And he said, "I just want you to know, I took that home. I started reading your leadership lessons." And he said, "I didn't even read the Bible. I was just reading your leadership lessons. And then I'd start, well, he said this stuff, so I'd go over and read it." And he said, "Within a year, I became a Christian."
Wow.
He said, "My life has totally changed." And he's just weeping. And I stood up and I gave him, this huge crowd. And I just hugged him. And I remembered the moment when I marked him mentally. Now, the reason I say that is because I think one of my favorite topics is the topic of unseen.
Mm-hmm.
And what I think is we have no idea when we sow seed the fruit that is born. I think that when we go to heaven, we're going to see that fruit. I think we're going to be able to contain the knowledge and understanding of all the places where what we did in a positive way for the sake of Christ, where we were salt and light and gave a cup of water, whatever. I think we're going to see those results. And so when we and this Leadership Bible, it's It sold well over 1 million copies. It's everywhere, and it's just one of my favorite things because it's leadership, and of course it's the Word of God. So
it's incredible. You know, I was sharing with you over lunch that one of the books that you wrote that changed my life was 25 Ways to Win with People.
Yeah.
So I started reading that right when I became a pastor, right when, I stepped into the role of leading our church. Ashley's the one who bought it for me, my wife, and
Well, she knew you desperately needed it.
she was like, he's losing with
Oh
people.
my gosh! What can I? In fact, she called me on the phone and said, "Oh, John, we have to help him.
gotta help him win.
What are we going to do?" I said, "I'll send you a
make
book."
friends.
She said, "Overnight it. Don't let it come through the regular mail. We got to get it to him as quick as we can."
So when I read it, though, I started practicing those 25 ways, and it was awesome how it started working with our staff, and I really did need to build our culture, build credibility
Sure.
with relationships, and rebuild our church. We had walked through the passing of my father and decline and so much stuff that we just needed to shift it. That book helped me a ton and helped our staff. So I started teaching it in the Bible college. Talk a little bit about, just the idea of leading with relationships and winning with people, why you wrote that book, and maybe even, in your own life, how you use that pastoring or leading now,
Sure.
the organizations you lead.
Well, you know, Paul, as well as I do, that relationships is the foundation of leadership. People won't go along with you if they can't get along with you. Mm-hmm. This is very simple. If you want to influence people, you have to be able to connect with people. And I'm big in relationships, and probably one of the reasons is my own father. My dad just passed away on the 4th of July this last year, and he was 98. But my dad, when I was in high school, we went to 2 Dale Carnegie courses, and I went through 2 Dale Carnegie courses with him. And when I was in the 7th grade, he put in my hands How to Win Friends and Influence People. You know, my father paid me an allowance to read books.
Wow.
Which was life-changing in itself. Life-changing. So I didn't get paid to do chores. In fact, his whole thing was, I don't pay you to do chores. You do that because you're part of the family. And I don't pay you to be part of the family. So, take out the garbage. But he did pay us to read books. My brother and myself. I'm the middle child. And whatever he bought the book for, he would pay us that much money when we read it. And so in the 7th grade, he handed me How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. I read that book every year through high school, took 2 Dale Carnegie courses, and at a very young age understood that my ability to connect and relate to people was going to be key to my success. And so I years later, I wrote a book called Winning with People. Mm-hmm. And that was my Dale Carnegie book. I said, I'm going to be another generation to make sure that those principles go on. And so I have what I call people principles in that book. In fact, what's interesting is Dale Carnegie's grandson, who I didn't know at all, from Long Island, got hold of our office when that book was out and said, I just read a book that reminds me more of my grandfather than anything I've ever read.
Wow. And
could I meet John Maxwell? And I lived in Atlanta at the time. He flew down to Atlanta, and we had a 2-hour lunch that day, and he brought the book with him.
That's amazing.
And he said, would you sign this book for me? I said, sign it. And he said, this is my grandfather. And then I told him what the influence is that he had on my life. And so Winning with People was such a successful book on relationships. I thought I want to write a book that would help people know how to do relationships, kind of be tangible, and that's why I wrote That's when I wrote the 25 Ways to Win with People, and it's the simple things, as you know, Paul, because you use it with your staff, you used it with yourself. Your dad gave it to you. You use it now teaching in college, I think. But it's like the 25 things. Like one is be the first to help. Mm-hmm. And basically, I just tell people that when you see somebody needs help, don't wait for somebody else, or don't wait for a group to say, let's go. No, just go help them. And I say, the first person that helps stands out above all the others because wow, they came first to my aid. Or share a secret with somebody. Sit down with them and say, look, let me share something with you. Honestly, I haven't shared this with many people, but I just wanted to pass this on to you. And it makes them feel very special. And all these, remember a person's name.
Yeah, 30-second rule.
Yeah, 30-second rule. Within 30 seconds, be sure to compliment somebody. And remembering, one of the Dale Carnegie courses I took was on remembering names. And so when I pastored, of course, now you have to go back to the olden days side, because I pastored, my last pastorate was in San Diego at Skyline from 81 to 95, 14 years. And so if you can think 92, 93, 94, 5 in those times, our hostess people, the people that made people feel, we had maybe, I don't know, on our campus, 250 people that served as greeters, hosts, et cetera, and they all had a Polaroid camera back then. And they were, and I would stand up and I'd say, now look, I said, the people that are our volunteer host people, they have a camera, and the reason they have that is we'd like to take your picture if it's your first time. And if you'll let us take your picture, they'll give me that picture with your name, and I'll memorize your name this week, so that if you come back next week as a second week person, I'll be able to call you by name. And every week, they would give me a big key ring with sometimes 3 key rings, with anywhere from 75 to a couple hundred people that had been there.
Wow.
And I'd put it on my desk, and during the week between appointments, I would just take the pictures, and I'd look at the picture and the name, and I would go through it, and I'd memorize their names. And it was
incredible.
Yeah. I knew about 3,800 people by name.
That's incredible.
And in fact, George Barna would come down. He was in L.A. and we were in San Diego. He'd come down and study our church all the time. And he told me this many years after I left the church. He said, John, I went down and I kept asking people, why is this church so vibrant, and what's the key to its growth, et cetera? And he said, John, the thing I heard more than anything else, he said, it wasn't that you were a great man of God or that you were an incredible communicator. He said, when I would ask people, they'd look at me and they'd say, well, he knows my name.
Wow.
He knows my name. And look at this huge campus with, that's before satellites. We had to have 5 services on Sunday morning. It was ridiculous. But he remembers, he knows me. He calls me by name. And it's just powerful. And so, it wasn't that, he's a brilliant leader or that he's an incredible communicator. He knows my name. Mm. And I would go around the campus calling people by name, and it was just life-changing to them. So anyway, it's all in that book on 25 ways to win with people.
When COVID hit in March of 2020, one of the things that from your book that inspired me was the personal touch, the importance of a personal touch. Yeah. And I thought during a pandemic, everyone's trapped at home. Not everyone feels safe going everywhere. This was in the first couple weeks. So I told our teen pastors, I said, we've got to return to the personal one-on-one ministry to every member in our church and every attendee. So within 2 weeks, they called 6,000 people.
Wow. I love that.
Personal phone calls. Yeah. Hey, Jerry, how you doing? Hey, Pat, how's everything going? You need anything? And these members were in tears, writing me letters saying, your personal phone call from Ty Barker or yourself or AJ, it meant more to me in the pandemic than any sermon you preached, just that phone call.
Totally.
And then our team, I said, follow up after the phone call. If they need something, we're going to be faster than Amazon. Let's deliver whatever they need to their door. So we delivered toilet paper. We delivered groceries. Well, in return, those same people were there to help us pay the bills for the church, to make sure the church continued to take care of the city. It was beautiful to see
I love this.
The relationship of pastoral church members together, meeting each other's needs. It's still to this day, I'm like, we can never forget the personal touch and connection with people.
With my staff, my major leadership staff, every Monday morning there was just a very simple rule. When you come in on Monday morning, before you do anything else, you write 5 personal notes to people in the church of something that you've interacted with them over the last week.
Wow.
And just every Monday morning, just 5 notes and send it out to them. And I think that's huge, because again, in a day with emails and texting and things such as that, I still keep a card stock and I still write notes.
I wrote you a note for this weekend that you're coming to preach. It's a long one. I don't know if you'll read it. But I'm not the best hand writer, so I was like, I'm going to take my time because I read his books and I want him to know how much it means. But it's powerful because a handwritten note goes a long way with people.
Of course. Of course it does.
I still keep cards from people.
It's Jack Welch, who was the CEO of General Electric, was a good friend of mine. And he called it getting out of the pile. He said, John, there's a huge people pile in life. How do you separate yourself from the people pile? And he said, you've got to do something unforgettable. And I tell people all the time, if you'll just take and write a couple of personal notes to people, they don't get them. I mean, it's almost like, oh my gosh, I got a note from them. Well, they wouldn't say that. Oh, I got an email from them. Oh, I got an email from them. I got a text. No, it's that. It's
personal.
Yeah. Set yourself apart.
You gave a quote to Ashley and I when we came to your house last year, which was so powerful. Talk about unforgettable. You let us come and spend 2 days with you in your hometown, and I'll never forget it the rest of my life. Made a huge impact on Ashley and I, and you invited about 10 other pastors and their wives.
I loved it. It was so fun. Remember you came over to my home? We had
came
an evening
over,
together.
had dinner. You did something unforgettable. You had a flamethrower at dinner.
Oh, yeah.
And that guy came out with the flamethrower, and he blew the flame over the steak, and it was amazing. You gave us all a pair of Maui Jim glasses. I still got my Maui Jims.
Attaboy.
Is that what they're called, Maui?
Yeah.
Am I saying them right?
You did a good job.
Yeah. So you said a quote, though, the difference between forgettable and unforgettable. What was it? Something along the lines.
Well, it's the fact that two things. It's intentional. If you're forgettable, you're unintentional. To be unforgettable, you have to do that on purpose. And the other thing is, it's just a little bit more.
That was it.
It's just a little bit more. It's not like, oh my gosh, you just were way over the top. No. Just consistently go a little bit over the top, because people never hardly ever see the top. It's kind of like there's a difference between excellence and above average excellence. So that above that last 2-3% is where you get all the return from it. It's very, very true. But you have to be intentional. You really do. And whether it's your note that you wrote me or I mean, it's the intentional things that really make a difference. And so every day, I think of ways that I'm going to add value to people. I look for ways that I'm going to add value to people when I'm with them. And I do things that add value to people every day. And so like today when I got up, I said, okay, I'm going to be with Paul and Ashley today. Okay, let's think about what can I do for you that will set you apart and help me to help you and serve you. And while I'm with you, I'm even still looking for ways to add value to you. And by the way, you see what you look for. You don't see what is. That's why two people would be in the same place and see totally different things. Mm-hmm. So you see what you look for. So if I'm looking for ways to add value to you, guess what? I'll see ways. Just like if I'm not looking for a way to add value to you, I won't see any way to add value to you.
Right.
So, and then you do things. You try to do things that'll, add value to you. I mean, it's the little stuff like when you brought me, remember we had lunch a little bit ago, and you brought me the, success book and said, I think you said your dad gave it to you, and in 2004. Mm-hmm. In fact, on June the 14th.
That's right.
Okay, June 14th is Margaret my wedding anniversary.
No way.
Yeah.
That's wild.
So we were that was in 2004. We were married in 1969. So that's 31. We were in our 35th year. Yeah, when he gave that to you.
Wow.
Okay. And so, but when you showed it to me from your dad, I took it and I got a pen. I asked you for a pen. To Paul and I signed it for you. I mean, okay, it's not a big deal, but it's a big deal.
It is.
It's a big deal.
It was a big deal to me. That you
but
signed
I'm
it.
looking for ways. Just okay. What do I do to just add value to you a little bit more?
Well, just you being here is adding value to Ashley and I. Just you coming and spending time, and it means a ton. I know you don't travel all the time, and so for you to come and spend time with us and come to Victory in Tulsa is huge. Any last thing you want to say to the podcast people out there?
Well, I just want to say that the reason I'm here is intentional. I'm not here by accident. I didn't just wake up this morning in Tulsa and say, well, I wonder what I could see today, and I wonder what we could do, and wow. No, it was very intentional, but there's a reason for that. I only have so much time. I'm 73, and so I've got to make every day count. And to make every day count, the best way to maximize it is to spend time with people that not only that you love, but people that you feel have the same passion and vision and desire to add value to people. And the reason I'm here with you and Ashley today, Paul, is very simple. It's very simple. You're part of my vision. You're part of my dream. In fact, I want to thank you again, as I will all day today, and your people for helping us financially in our nonprofit organization, training leaders around the world in transformation. I mean, so that you've invested in us, which is huge. But what I've discovered was this: you really never know if a person is committed until they make a financial investment. I don't mean that wrong. It's easy for me to say I'm behind you and yeah, this is good. But there's another thing for me to give either my time or my finances to you. Because now, what do you do with your checkbook? What do you do with your calendar? And I think that's where the commitment is really understood and realized. And so I made a determination that I would take people like you two that love what I love and do what I do, and mentor you and pour into you and leave my legacy with you. So whether you like it or not, you got me. So,
Come on,
hey, you're stuck.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, here comes the old guy again. Well, let's give him a day or two. But here we go.
Well, hey, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and thank y'all for listening out there. Stay tuned for more episodes coming up, and I think we're going to upload his message from this weekend at the church on the podcast, so stay tuned for that. Much love. God bless you.